Hello everyone, I am Emily and welcome to Historic Adventures. Today, we are taking you on a journey to Stokesay Castle. We hope you enjoy. The gatehouse is a two-storey building from the 17th century, showcasing exposed timber and plasterwork characteristic of the unique Shropshire architectural style. The structure is adorned with intricate wooden carvings on both the exterior and interior doorways, depicting a variety of figures including angels, Adam, Eve, and the serpent from the Garden of Eden, along with dragons and other nude forms. In the 18th century, Stokesay Castle transitioned from an aristocratic residence to a utilitarian role, serving as an agricultural store and workshop. Around 1830, a smithy was established within the castle, which eventually led to a fire in the South Tower. The aftermath of this blaze is still evident today in the charred ceiling beams of the room above, bearing silent witness to this chapter in the castle's history. The first floor of the tower, which once served as its original entrance, features a 17th century fireplace that cleverly repurposes the original 13th century chimney. The basement below, originally accessible only from the first floor, offered a secure storage area and housed a well, ensuring the castle's occupants had a reliable water source. The solar block, with its surviving mid-17th century wood panelling, ceiling, and remarkable fireplace over mantel, stands as one of the castle's most impressive features. This elegant space was designed for receiving important guests, dining, and relaxation, offering a high level of comfort by the standards of the time. The imposing fireplace provided warmth, while large windows on three sides ensured the room was well lit. From small windows flanking the fireplace, activities in the Great Hall below could be discreetly observed. The 17th century interiors that you see today were likely crafted under the direction of Charles Baldwin and his family, who resided at Stokesay from at least 1647 until the late 18th century. The Baldwins were prominent local landowners and served as successive members of Parliament for Ludlow. Samuel and Elizabeth Baldwin welcomed their daughter, also named Elizabeth, at Stokesay around 1650, further cementing the family's deep connection to this historic estate. The Great Hall, with its soaring, curved beams, served as the social and political heart of Stokesay Castle throughout much of its history. Its builder, Lawrence of Ludlow, who died in 1294, was a wealthy wool merchant and royal advisor, though not of noble birth. The hall's features, such as the open hearth and impressive roof structure, were deliberately designed to evoke the grandeur of older castle halls, perhaps intended to give visitors the impression that both the castle and the Ludlow family's status as its lords had deeper, more ancient roots than they actually did. Dendrochronological analysis has dated the roof and staircase to the late 13th century, making these largely unchanged features exceptionally rare survivors in English castles. Stokesay's Great Hall stands as a remarkable example of medieval architecture, preserving elements that almost never endure to the present day. Located just off the Great Hall, this space likely served various functions over time. When Lawrence of Ludlow acquired Stokesay in 1281, the tower was probably already in place, and this room may have been used for food preparation or washing dishes for meals served in the hall. The well in the room would have provided water for these purposes. The three-storey North Tower is accessed via a 13th century staircase that ascends from the Great Hall to the first floor. Shortly after the tower was built, This floor was divided into two separate rooms, each featuring decorative tiles that likely originated from Lawrence of Ludlow's residence in Ludlow. These tiles add a touch of personal history to the space, reflecting the connection between Lawrence's life and his architectural legacy at Stokesay. The second floor's walls are predominantly half-timbered, jutting out over the stone walls below in a distinctive jettying style. The tower retains its original 13th century fireplace, while the wooden roof, though reconstructed in the 19th century, faithfully follows the design of the 13th century original. The windows, added in the 17th century, bring a later touch to the room. Intricate details and the carpenter's personal marks on the woodwork reveal that the hall, solar and north tower were all crafted under the guidance of the same master carpenter during the late 1280s and early 1290s. The second floor's walls are predominantly half-timbered, jutting out over the stone walls below in a distinctive jettying style. The tower retains its original 13th century fireplace, while the wooden roof, though reconstructed in the 19th century, faithfully follows the design of the 13th century original. The windows, added in the 17th century, bring a later touch to the room. Intricate details and the carpenter's personal marks on the woodwork reveal that the hall, solar and north tower were all crafted under the guidance of the same master carpenter during the late 1280s and early 1290s. The roof of the south tower offers sweeping views of the surrounding landscape. In the 13th century, wooden mantlets were installed in the gaps of the merlons along the battlements, providing added protection. During the English Civil War, the tower was further fortified with additional wooden defences to safeguard the garrison stationed there. A settlement existed at Stokesay as early as the Domesday Book of 1086, and by the early 1260s there was likely a manorial building on the site where the castle now stands. However, most of what we see today was constructed during the 1280s and early 1290s. Lawrence of Ludlow, a wool merchant who had risen to become one of England's wealthiest men, acquired the manor in 1281 and soon embarked on creating an extraordinary residence. By 1291, much of the work was completed and Lawrence received a license to crenellate, allowing him to fortify his home. Lawrence's decision to build such an impressive dwelling was made in the wake of the newfound peace on the Welsh border, following Edward I's conquest of Wales in 1284. Yet the late 13th century was still a time of growing unrest, with bands of thieves becoming increasingly active. Stokesay Castle was designed to strike a delicate balance between the need for security and Lawrence's desire to showcase his taste, wealth, and social standing. Despite its grandeur, Stokesay had, and still has, an understated charm, a subtlety likely intended to reassure the powerful Welsh marcher lords. Many of these lords were eager to borrow from Lawrence's wealth, and this new arrival posed no threat to their own power and influence. Lawrence of Ludlow met a tragic end in 1294, drowning while transporting wool to the Low Countries, yet his legacy lived on through his descendants, who established deep roots at Stokesay and remained its lords until 1498. Over the centuries, they lived as country squires, earning a respected place among the Shropshire gentry. Lawrence's son, William, likely oversaw the completion of his father's grand project, while his grandson, Sir Lawrence Ludlow, faced a more turbulent fate, arrested by the king for allegedly failing in his duties as a tax collector. Estate surveys from the period reveal that the manor of Stokesay comprised 120 acres of arable land, 6 acres of meadow for hay, a wood, 2 watermills and a dovecote. Surviving accounts from the late 14th century offer a glimpse into the Ludlow family's management of their estate and daily life within the castle. These records detail labourers' wages, purchases of livestock and farming tools, expenses for clothing, food and drink, as well as payments for music and the occasional essential repairs, carried out with frugality when necessity arose. Stokesay, when the last male, Ludlow, passed away in 1498, Stokesay Castle was inherited by one of his granddaughters, who brought it into the hands of Thomas Vernon, a member of a prominent and wealthy family from Derbyshire. The Vernons' elevated social status likely enhanced the standing of Stokesay, which was described in 1539 by John Leland as being built like a castle. Thomas's grandson, Henry Vernon, was a man with lofty ambitions, spending much of his wealth and time in futile legal battles to claim the lands and title of the Barons Grey of Powys. Despite his grand aspirations, Henry's records indicate that he only visited Stokesay occasionally. However, a dendrochronological survey reveals that repairs were made to the castle's north tower around 1577, suggesting some level of ongoing maintenance. Henry Vernon's fortunes took a turn for the worse in 1591 when he was arrested for debt, leading to his financial ruin. By 1596, he was forced to sell his Shropshire properties, including Stokesay, to Sir George Mainwaring of Ipefield. The sale records from this period also note that the castle grounds now included a park, home to both red and fallow deer, marking a new chapter in the estate's history. Shortly after acquiring Stokesay, Sir George Mainwaring sold the estate at a profit to a consortium of buyers, who then passed it on in 1620 to Dame Elizabeth Craven and her son William, later the first Earl of Craven. William, an ardent soldier and a prolific builder, left a significant mark on the castle's appearance. Between 1640 and 1641, he invested over £530 in improvements, most notably constructing the gatehouse. This work is well documented in his accounts and confirmed by dendrochronological evidence. The following year, the English Civil War erupted, yet Stokesay was fortunate to escape destruction. As a devoted royalist, Craven had the castle garrisoned in support of the king, marking the only time in its history it served a military purpose. However, when parliamentarian forces advanced into Shropshire in 1645, the castle was surrendered without a fight. The victorious forces dismantled the curtain walls almost down to the level of the moat, but left the newly built gatehouse intact. The garrison's occupation left Stokesay in a state of disrepair, but during the Commonwealth period the castle was restored by its tenants, the Baldwin family. The condition of the estate at this time is remarkably well documented, offering a rare glimpse into the surrounding fields, meadows and woods, as well as the farming equipment and the buildings and their contents. After the restoration of Charles II in 1660, William Craven regained all his estates, including Stokesay Castle. However, he and his heirs paid little attention to the upkeep of the castle itself. By the early 18th century, the Baldwin family had moved on, and Stokesay was leased to a succession of tenant farmers. Throughout much of the 18th century, parts of the castle were adapted for practical use. Some buildings served as storage and workshops. The Grand Hall became a granary, and the basement of the South Tower was converted into a smithy. In 1830, a fire in the smithy destroyed all the floors above, accelerating the castle's decline. As the buildings fell into what seemed like irreversible decay, Stokesay began to attract the attention of antiquarians and artists. Increasingly, watercolours and engravings depicted the castle, sometimes in a romanticised light, while others documented the practical uses of its once grand spaces. Visitors expressed admiration for the castle's historical significance, but lamented its deteriorating state. A dedicated advocate emerged in Frances Stackhouse Acton, a skilled artist and antiquary. In 1853, she appealed to Lord Craven to save the castle from complete ruin, although just over £100 was spent 2 years later on clearing out and securing the castle. The efforts proved insufficient to reverse the effects of centuries of neglect. In 1869, John Darby Allcroft, a prosperous London glove manufacturer, acquired the Stokesay estate and soon embarked on an extensive and sensitive restoration of the historic castle. Choosing to build a new mansion nearby at Stokesay Court, Allcroft decided that the castle itself should remain unoccupied, preserved as a historic monument. The much-needed restoration began in 1875, and by 1887 the castle buildings were structurally sound, closely resembling their appearance from the late 17th century. Remarkably, the restoration work was carried out with such care that it left little trace of its own intervention, allowing the conserved buildings to stand as a testament to the art of unobtrusive restoration. The most significant alteration during Allcroft's restoration was the adaptation of the gatehouse to accommodate a caretaker, and even this change affected only the interior fittings. Allcroft's descendants continued his legacy, doing everything they could to preserve Stokesay's fabric. They opened the castle to the public, using much of the income from admission fees for its upkeep. However, the costs of maintenance gradually outpaced their resources. In 1986, Jewel Magnus Allcroft made an agreement with English Heritage, transferring responsibility for the castle's conservation during her lifetime and full ownership upon her death in 1992. Thank you for joining us on this journey to Stokesay Castle. We hope this video brought value to you. If it did, please give us a like and drop us a comment, and please consider subscribing. Until next time, see you soon.